Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Zara and today I'm going to be walking you through the books that I read in the month of August and what I'm planning to read in the month of September. I have a tentative TBR and so I will walk you through those. But with that in mind, let's jump into what I read in the month of August. I did read quite a few books, more than I anticipated that I would. Compared to last month, I read quite a bit more sci-fi and fantasy. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll know that I do read across different genres, but this month was very much a sci-fi and fantasy month. So with that in mind, let's jump in. So the first book that I read was These Burning Stars, which is the first book in an unfinished trilogy by Bethany Jacobs. And in this book, we are essentially following three main characters in a space opera, and there's a lot of politics, there's a lot of backstabbing, and there's a lot of things happening not necessarily on page that we have to kind of deduce as we're reading the book. It's fantastic. I've not heard anybody talking about it, and it is an absolutely fantastic trilogy so far. The book 2 is about to come out, I think early next year, and I have already read book 2. I got an arc of it. I'll talk more about that later on, but this first book was amazing. I did initially give it a 4.5 stars, but I actually think it deserves a 5 stars, especially if I compare it to book 2. Like, I think it is quite a bit better than book 2, and I think it is a fantastic start to what is shaping up to be a really interesting trilogy. The next book that I read was Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. This was my first Murakami, and it was really interesting. I quite enjoyed it, and I had very mixed feelings. We're following our main character in essentially what is a coming of age story. We see him kind of at university, and then also when he finishes university, and his relationship with the various women that he has in his life. It is a very interesting story in the sense that it really had me conflicted. In some ways, I really liked aspects of it. I think Murakami does an amazing job of making this story feel very relatable, but in then other regards, I do think his depiction of women is not the best personally, and that is a common criticism that I've heard of his books. But I think overall I did really like the tone of the book, and I ended up giving it a 3 stars. Not to say that I think it's a badly written book. I will talk more about this in my review, but there were certain things that I didn't like which impacted my overall enjoyment of the book. The next one that I read was a manga, and this is the final manga, and now I'm up to date, and that is Hyasumi Volume 6 by Kaigo Shinzo. I read this one afternoon when I just felt like I needed to break a break from my week, and that managed to get me through it, thankfully. And then the next book that I read was a sci-fi book that has been getting a lot of buzz, and I personally think deservedly so. I will be doing a dedicated review on this as well, so I won't say too much now. And that is The Mercy of Gods by James S.A. Corey. For those who don't know, one half of James S.A. Corey is Daniel Abraham, who is one of my favourite authors, and I really, really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4.5 stars. This is a space opera. We are following a diverse cast of characters as they're trying to come to terms with the fact that they are now in this very alien and unknown world. I really enjoyed it. I definitely had a few minor gripes with it, but I'll talk more about that in my review. The next one that I read was the second book in a trilogy, and that is a book and a series that I've talked about a few times now, and that is the Just City trilogy, the Thessaly trilogy by Joe Walton, the Philosopher King's second book in the trilogy. And I have to say, I did really like it. I think it's not as good as the first one, but I think it continues on the story, and it does actually put the third book into a really interesting direction that I'm really excited to see play out. I gave this one a 3.75 stars. I had a lot of fun with it, and I'm really excited to see how this trilogy finishes up later on this year. The next book that I read was a classic, and that is from one of my favorite authors, and that was The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. I read this book because I've been wanting to read it for probably over a decade now. And I also went to go see the National Theatre production of The Grapes of Wrath as well, 2 weeks later from when I finished it. So I knew I was going to the theatre production, and I wanted to make sure that I read the book before I went to go see the theatre production, and it was absolutely wonderful. I'll talk more about the theatre production in a minute, but the book is incredible. It's not my favourite. East of Eden is still my favourite, but I think, you know, it's easily a 4.75, 5 stars, to be honest. Like, I gave it a 4.75, more just to show that compared to East of Eden, it's not my favourite, but I honestly think it deserves a 5 stars. This is, again, very much a family drama. It's very much a story about migration, about people being forced out of their homes, people being forced into situations that are not of their own doing. It is a wonderful story, and going to watch it then in the theatre, I think really made me appreciate the story even more. Like, after I came out of the play, I felt like I had a better understanding of certain characters than when I only read the book. And it made me kind of fall in love with the book more. And I really think that the production did an absolutely amazing job of really getting to the core of what makes The Grapes of Wrath really special. So this one was, a very, very high rating for me, a book to be reread time and time again, a book that is very, very relevant to today. And I strongly recommend it if you haven't read it yet. And then next I had War Gods by Terry Pratchett. This was a really fun time. Like, this is my third Terry Pratchett book now. Whenever I read his stuff, I just remember what I love about it. And then I say to myself, why have I not read more Terry Pratchett? Because his books are so good. They are so good. There is this wonderful mixture of humour with deeply philosophical work. This book is all about religion. It centres around the role of religion in society and how it can also be weaponized as well. It was just so well captured. And yet every single page or every other page, I was laughing. Like, I laughed so much reading this book. It was fantastic. If you want like a quick read that is going to ask some interesting questions, but also have you laughing out loud, then you should definitely pick this up. I will do a dedicated review on this as well, so watch this space for that. And then the next book that I read was On Vicious Worlds, which is the second book in the Kingdom trilogy by Bethany Jacobs, the first book being These Burning Stars. And I had an arc of this book. This was a good continuation. I don't think it was nearly as good as book one because I gave it a 3.5 stars, but I think it's classic middle book. Like, it progresses the story, it progresses the character arcs, a lot more action-packed than maybe I would have personally liked, but it continues the story in an interesting direction, and I'm really excited to see where this series finishes off after Bethany Jacobs writes and publishes the final book. And then last but most certainly not least, I wasn't planning to talk about this one, but I did finish it right at the beginning of September. So I will talk about it this month and next month because it overlapped into 2 months. And that is The Assassins Apprentice, which is the first book in the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. I've been wanting to read this series probably for about 15 years. Like, I remember hearing about this series when I was a teenager, and I've owned the books for quite a long time, like probably about 8-9 years. So this is a series that I've been long awaiting to read, but I was so kind of anxious about reading it because it is so beloved and there's so much hype. And we all know, if you've been watching my channel, me and hype, it just doesn't work out in general. Like, not even 5% of the time it doesn't work out. So I was very nervous. But I have to say, I absolutely devoured this book. I loved it so much. I'm going to be filming my review very soon, so I'm not going to say more than that. But all you need to know is that I gave it 5 stars because it's that good. I do not give 5 stars easily these days. And not all 5 stars are necessarily equal. It's easily one of the best and well-written fantasy series that I've ever read. And I'm only in book 1. So there we have it. So those are the books that I read in the month of August. So in terms of what I'm going to read in the month of September, obviously I did finish off Assassin's Apprentice in the first 1-2 days of September. And then the time that I'm recording this, it is actually September. So I have already picked up the second Farseer trilogy book, which is called Royal Assassin. And I'm only about 15% in, so it's a bit too soon to kind of say anything about my opinion on it. But overall, so far, the writing just continues to be absolutely amazing. Then I'm going to read a book that is published from an author that I have talked about and reviewed on my channel before. And that is a new book that he's publishing called New York Minute by Stephen Aryan. I think this is like a low fantasy, urban fantasy kind of spiel. I really like Stephen's writing, so I'm very excited to pick this up. This is also an arc. Then the next one I'm going to pick up, and these are in no particular order, I will pick up Fathers and Children by Ivan Turgenev. I have started my Russian literature era. I'm going to try and read a Russian book every single month. So that is without a doubt going to be on my list. I also want to read The Samurai by Shisaku Endo as well. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get to that one this month, but I am almost certain that I will pick it up at some point. We will also be reading The Goblin Emperor by Catherine Addison with my Patreon members as well. So I'll be reading that at some point in the month of September with them. I'm so excited to read this book because I've heard so many good things about it, and I think we're all pretty psyched. And if you'd like to join that, obviously do consider joining my Patreon. Links are all down below. I'm also certain that I will pick up the third and final Farseer trilogy book, which also goes by the name of Assassin's Quest. I want to finish off this trilogy this month. I am also traveling this month. I am going to Singapore and I will be there for a little while. And so I don't necessarily expect to do a ton of reading while I'm there, but I am planning to take The Brothers Karamazov or The Idiot by Dostoevsky. I haven't decided which one I am going to take with me, but I will take one of those as well. And then the last book that I really want to read is KJ Parker is publishing a new fantasy trilogy kind of Easter of next year. And he has kindly sent me the 3 books already. So I am planning to read 1 book a month over the next 3 months as well. So it doesn't have a title yet. I believe it's coming out March 25th, 2025 in the UK at the very least. It doesn't have a title, doesn't have a cover yet. There is a working title that I am aware of, but I'm not going to share it because I don't think I'm allowed to, and I don't want to kind of ruin that surprise when it does come out. So I will definitely pick that up as well. So those are a couple of the books that I'm planning to read. I have said this before, I am very much a mood reader. It might turn out that I might end up just reading Hobb and Dostoevsky this entire month. I highly doubt that, but who knows at this point, because I am loving both of those authors. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So let me know down below what books you are planning to read. Let me know what you read in the month of August as well, especially if there were any particular hits or any particular misses. I always love to hear kind of what's on your TBRs and what you're liking and what you're not liking. And I'll see you down below in the comments. Thanks for watching, folks. Stay safe as always. Take care, and I will see you very soon. Bye.